You're in the timber because there isn't any other place to be. There's no meadow across the canyon, no open basin you can sweep with a spotter, no ridge line you can see end to end, just trees in every direction, and maybe 50 yards of visibility on a good morning. This is where most elk hunting education stops working. Everything you've been taught about elk hunting, Western elk, glass first, find the animal, make a plan, execute, assumes you can see something. In all timber country, you can't. Your binoculars go from being your most important tool to being almost useless. If you don't have a system that works without them, you're covering ground and hoping, and that's not elk hunting. When glassing isn't an option, most elk hunters do one of two things. They cover as much ground as fast as they can, just hoping to bump into elk, or they find a small opening, set up, and call into the trees, hoping something walks out. Neither is a system. Both produce the same result most of the time: a long, hard day and an unfilled tag. Thick timber has its own system. You replace your optics with sign. You replace long range glassing with topo reading, tracks, sound, and your nose. You replace fast miles with a pace that feels almost too slow until an elk materializes at 50 yards. Learn that system, and the timber stops being the thing that stumps you. It becomes your advantage over every elk hunter who doesn't know how to work it. Now, I've spent 34 years elk hunting and guiding Western elk across every terrain type this country offers, and a significant portion of that time has been in country where thick timber is all you've got. I've also spent 30 years as a professional strength, conditioning, and nutrition coach, working with athletes at every level, including years competing as an elite athlete myself. All of those experiences have taught me the same thing: the best performers adapt their tools to the environment they're actually in. Here's how that applies to all timber elk country. The first thing that has to change when you're hunting thick timber isn't your gear or your calling sequence. It's how you think about finding elk at all. In open country, the sequence is clear: glass until you find an animal, make a plan, execute. That sequence doesn't exist in the timber. You can't find elk with your eyes from a distance because the distance doesn't exist. Everything compresses. Your detection range drops from what could be miles down to 50 yards. Your shot opportunity goes from a measured stalk to an encounter you may have 5 seconds to react to. And your primary tools shift from your eyes to your ears, your nose, and sign that's actually under your boots. The pace changes completely here too. In open country, you can cover miles looking for elk. The pace changes completely too. In open country, you cover miles looking for elk a lot of times. In thick timber, covering miles fast is how you educate every elk in the drainage and ruin your own hunt. Speed is your enemy here. Slow isn't just the safer approach, it's the only approach that actually produces elk. The hunters who do well in all timber country have made peace with something that a lot of elk hunters struggle with. You won't know the elk are there a lot of times until you're very close. You're operating without the visual confirmation that glassing provides. Accept that. Build your system around what the timber actually offers instead of what you wish was there. The system starts before you ever pull on your boots. It's on the map. You can't glass into dark timber, but you can scout it on a topo map before you walk in. And the map tells you more than a lot of elk hunters realize, because elk and heavy timber still follow terrain logic. The features they prefer show up clearly on a topo map, even when the ground truthing shows that there's nothing but trees. Now, the feature that matters most is the bench. A bench is a flat or nearly flat zone on an otherwise steeper slope, right? The place where contour lines spread out before the grade resumes. Elk bet on benches because they're not fighting gravity to hold their position. It just makes them easier for them, right? There are animals of opportunity. In all timber country, a bench on a north-facing slope in the upper third of a ridge system is the single best place you can start. North-facing timber means more dense timber, cooler temperatures, and more moisture, exactly the conditions elk prefer during daylight hours. Water inside timber is probably your next best mapping target. Springs, seeps, and small drainages that hold water are on topographic maps if you look for them. Elk are big animals that can't go without water for long, so find it inside the timber and you've narrowed the search considerably. The finger canyons matter a lot too, in my opinion. In most drainages, hunters push up the main corridor because that's the path of least resistance for them. But elk know that pattern. They use the side fingers instead that branch off the main drainage a lot of times. The smaller, less obvious canyons that don't have established trails and that most hunters are going to go right past. Find those on the map and put them near the top of your list. Hey, if you hunt public land elk and you're tired of grinding through random seasons, I built the elk hunting series of ebooks for you. Most hunters don't struggle because they lack effort. They struggle because they lack a system. And that's exactly why I built the elk hunting ebook series as a complete progressive framework for Western elk hunters who are done guessing and ready to hunt with intention. Volume 1 is going to be Foundations in Reality. I reset your mindset and expose the assumptions that quietly wreck seasons. In Volume 2, Finding Elk and Understanding Pressure, you'll learn how elk actually move under pressure so you can anticipate instead of react. In Volume 3, Terrain, Wind, and Position, I break down how to use landscape and thermals to consistently create opportunities. In Volume 4, Calling, Silence, and Pressure, sound becomes a decision tool, not an impulse. In Volume 5, Bow Hunting Execution, we're talking about close range strategy so you can finish your encounters. And in Volume 6, Late Season and Post Rut, we're talking about how elk shift after the rut and how to adapt when others quit. This is a system built for consistency. This isn't theory, it's a structured system to help you find elk, read country, and make confident decisions every season. Buy each volume individually or bundle them all to save 50% off at backboneunlimited.com. Every hour you spend on the map before you hunt is going to save you multiple hours of aimless walking in the trees. So once you're in there, sign is how you find the elk. Now, in open country, you glass until you see an animal a lot of times, but in dark timber, you read sign until you find where the animal's actually living. Same goal, completely different process. There are 5 types of sign that matters most for us in thick timber, and you read them together, not just one at a time. That combination is what tells you whether you're in dead country or standing in a bull's living room. Beds are the most direct evidence. Multiple beds clustered in a small area mean elk are returning to that bench regularly. Fresh beds have a body impression that's compressed into the soil or grass that hasn't had time to spring back yet. And there's the smell. That smell is so important. Elk smell like a horse stable, right? Except they have their own unique smell that I love. Strong and unmistakable. When you catch that smell moving through the timber, you can't dismiss it. You've got to stop and slow down. You're close. I can't tell you how many times the smell has helped us kill elk. Rubs tell you about travel. A single rub on a tree is information. A series of rubs on trees 50 to 100 yards apart, running in a consistent direction, that's a travel corridor. That's the route a bull is using to move through his country. Find the line of rubs and follow it. Wallows separate active areas from dead ones a lot faster than anything else. An active wallow has murky water, churned up mud on the banks, hair compressed into the edges, and a smell that hits you from 20 yards away. An abandoned wallow has clear water and dried, cracked edges. You've got to know the difference. One tells you elk are here now, the other tells you that they were there maybe weeks ago, right? Droppings have a freshness window too, and you can read it. Dark, moist poop with a slight sheen were left within hours. Dry, cracked, faded poop is old. Fresh droppings in a concentrated area mean the elk are moving through regularly. Tracks give you the same information. Sharp, crisp edges mean recent passage. Crumbled edges, debris in the impression, or dried soil at the base mean the track is older. A fresh track in soft ground tells you more than an old track is going to tell you in firm ground. Work those 5 signs together. When you find a series of fresh rubs ending at a wallow 200 yards below a bench with clustered fresh beds, now you found a bull's home address. That's where you spend your time. Your ears and nose are part of this system too, right? We already talked about the nose. You've got to stop every few steps, right? And stand completely still. You're not going to hear 90% of elk sounds unless you're motionless. The sounds they make in thick timber, body movement, antlers brushing against branches, soft cow mews, the occasional crunch of a hoof or kicking a rock, are subtle enough that walking masks all of them. Stop. Listen, smell the air, use that elky smell, try to catch it ahead of the animal if you haven't blown the area yet. Sign gets you to the right direction, right? The pace you move from that point is going to determine whether any of it actually matters. 2 or 3 steps. Stop, scan, That's the pace in timber. Not because it feels efficient. It absolutely doesn't. You're going to have FOMO kicking in like crazy, fear of missing out, because encounters in thick timber happen at ranges where normal walking speed means the elk are going to detect you before you know he's there. You're not trying to cover ground. You're trying to build awareness faster than you build disturbance. The type of timber you're moving through matters too. Lodgepole pine has open spacing and minimal low branches. You can see a lot better. You can move easier and you can stay quieter. Thick spruce or dog-haired pine and deadfall are going to make every step a noise event and cut your visibility to almost nothing. So you got to try to pick timber that allows you to move through and hunt, right? Try to go around a lot of the stuff that's going to make you more blind or louder. Use bad weather when you can too. Wind and rain hold elk tighter, mask your movement sounds, and create conditions where you can cover more ground with less risk of detection. A wet, windy morning in dark timber is not a morning to sleep in. Those are my favorite days in elk hunting if I'm going to be doing any kind of still hunting. Those are often the best hunting mornings of the season. Once you're positioned in a live area, calling in tight timber can work differently than it does in more open country as well. So let's touch on that because the difference is in your favor. Here's what a lot of elk hunters don't realize. In more open country, a bull can stand a long ways away and look towards that call, study the terrain from a distance, and decide whether he should commit. He's got full information and all the time he wants. He might see nothing that looks right from a long distance, and he walks away without ever being in range. But in thick timber, he can't do that. He has to get close to see what's there or leave, and that's his only choice. The visual obstruction that makes timber feel harder to hunt is actually working for you now. It forces a decision at a range you can work with, but your calling approach has to fit the environment. Soft calls do more work here than aggressive ones a lot of time. Cow calls and soft mews are better starting points than hard challenge bugles. A bugle in thick timber at 80 yards tells the bull your exact location to within a few feet, and he's already really close. That's useful information for an animal that's already cautious. So unless he's already fired up and you're challenging him and you're just trying to bring him in that last little bit, try to use different tools. Now, raking is an underrated tool in this environment. So using branches or your bugle tube to do some raking on some trees can also create realistic, believable sound without giving away the same position of location that a vocal call would. And it's also a little bit less threatening and it builds realism into the setup, right? Now, if you do locate a bull inside the timber and you feel like he's inside 100 yards and he's coming, I would stop calling entirely. Any sound you make is just going to confirm where exactly he can find you at a distance where he can act on that information immediately. So I would try to go more silent. If you know that he's coming, let him walk into nothing. So in thick timber, we really have to pay attention to that scent, especially when you're setting up to call. Make sure that the shooter is going to be setting up downwind, right, off some angle from where you think that bull's going to appear to make sure that your scent isn't blowing directly into his nose when he comes in. Since it's such close range, he's definitely inside that scent bubble. And wind in heavy timber can be harder to predict than in more open terrain, right? So we've got to really pay attention to that. Check it constantly with your powder and make sure that every few minutes you're stopping, checking that wind every single time. Now, the same mid-morning and late afternoon thermals apply here, right? Make sure that those thermals are stable or wait until it stabilizes. I also want you to have a backup drainage that hunts well with a different wind direction if you can. If the wind's wrong for your primary area one day, just don't walk in and contaminate it for the rest of the week. Hunt the backup area, protect your primary area, and come back when you feel the conditions are right or you figure out a better approach. Now, all timber country takes a tool that a lot of elk hunters depend on most and makes it useless. There's no glassing, no long-range confirmation, no open basin to sweep at first light. What gives you instead is a different kind of elk hunting, slower, close combat, and more deliberate than anything the open country demands. So you've got to read your map, find the benches before you go in. Let sign do what your optics can't. Move at the pace that the timber requires. Call soft and really pay attention to what's going on once you have those bulls committed. Manage the wind like every step is the one that decides the entire hunt because inside those close ranges, it probably is. The elk are there. They're not harder to kill necessarily. They've just found a different way to exist, so you have to find a different approach. Now, if this episode made you realize you need a better elk plan this season, Don't just watch another video and hope it all comes together. Build the plan right now. If you want to study the full system on your own, my system, start with my elk hunting series of ebooks. If you want daily guidance, accountability, and a place to ask questions as season gets closer, join me on Team Backbone. If you want my eyes on your actual hunt plan, your maps, your access, terrain, pressure points, wind and thermals, and your strategy, book an elk hunt plan audit with me and I'll help you tighten it up before season. If the missing piece is your body, your legs, your lungs, or your ability to handle mountain miles and a heavy pack, check out my Backbone Unlimited training plans. And if nutrition is where you need more structure, getting leaner, fueling long days, or building a better in-season food plan, check out my nutrition plans. The hunters who are ready in September and October are the ones who start tightening their plan right now. So go to backboneunlimited.com, choose the path that fits where you are now, and I'll help you get started. Thanks for being here. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you in the comments. You know I read and respond to all of them. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, and never settle.